Okay, so Roger, your selection is The Menu, released in 2022. Let's watch a trailer together.
Good evening. Welcome to Hawthorne. It'll be our pleasure to feed you.
Tonight will be magical.
Over the next few hours, you will ingest fat, salt, protein, and at times entire ecosystems.
We're eating the ocean.
We're eating the ocean.
Are you crying?
It's just I find it all very moving.
So it's okay that I'm not as into this as you are. Oh my god.
You shouldn't be here tonight. You, my dear guests, are not the common man. Isn't that right?
Is he gonna keep doing that?
What happens inside this room is meaningless compared to what happens outside. We are but a frightened nanosecond. Nature is timeless.
What the hell is going on?
I love you all.
We love you too, sir!
Any questions?
Is this bergamot I'm getting, Chef?
Yes, it is.
Well, Pascal, would you eat in that restaurant?
No. And I mean, what an experience, both visually, but also, about the music and so on. For me, what was fascinating is this is you've already selected about a month or so ago, the Banshees of Inisherin. And I was thinking, so Roger's going through an island theme at the moment because the Banshees of Inisherin. So we're back on an island. It had this incredible range from horror to comedy, satire to commentary on to the society, some dig at celebrity status, social media, and so on, but crafted into really an gorgeous film. And the music was absolutely so. This juxtaposition of genre and style was very, very jarring, which makes you as uncomfortable as the guest in that restaurant. I'm torn whether or not we should say more, but then again, which is probably one of the tactics we want to discuss in a moment, the teaser trailer we just seen reveals quite a bit about the storyline in any case.
I think from the work I did on looking at the marketing for this, I think they struggled with putting the trailer together because it's very, very difficult to put anything in a trailer that doesn't give anything away. Literally, they would all be able to do is introduce the characters. And if you actually look at the teaser trailer that we watched and then the full trailer, I think the full trailer is only about 40 seconds longer than the teaser trailer, which proves to me that they couldn't actually add much more in to what they'd already teased. Otherwise, they'd have totally blown it. I mean, I think they do actually give quite a bit away, and it's pretty obvious from watching the teaser trailer what actually happens and what the twist is. But the main trailer doesn't really give much more than that away. It's just maybe slightly longer clips from each of the scenes in the teaser. So I do think they struggled with this one because they didn't want to blow the plot too much. But as you say, it takes place on an island. It takes place at a very high-end 3 Michelin star restaurant called Hawthorne, and the head chef at Hawthorne is played by a really quite sinister Ray Fiennes, and we've got 2 youngsters played by Anya Taylor-Joy and Nicholas Hoult who go to the restaurant, and obviously things happen. One of the things that I do love about this is that I'm a massive fan of MasterChef, particularly a massive fan of the Australian version of MasterChef. And, you do get those sometimes quite pretentious Michelin star chefs appearing on MasterChef. And, it almost becomes a bit of a joke, when they add these tiny little flowers onto their perfectly crafted one little piece of meat or whatever.
It's funny using tweezers like
tweezers,
like surgeons.
and you think, oh, for goodness sake! And this film very successfully sort of sends all of that up, doesn't it? And sort of highlights what an absolute joke it can be. And there's a lovely twist at the end involving a burger, which we probably shouldn't talk about because that might ruin the entire film. But yeah, we really enjoyed it. We thought it was it's a sort of subgenre of films that are going on at the moment, isn't it? Where you've got a group of rich, possibly quite entitled people being brought together in a location and then getting their comeuppance. You know, the second Knives Out film, The Glass Onion, is another example of that sort of genre where people are being brought together and then something nasty happens to them. But I think for me, it was that sending up of the restaurant culture. And in fact, I managed to find, and this was a comment that a chef had left on the YouTube comments section underneath the teaser trailer. And this chef said, "This is amazing. I'm a 30-year chef, and to be perfectly honest, not going to say many kitchens and industrial people wouldn't smile and nod at many points through this film. As well, everything was so well done. It's a fresh news story, great social commentary, wildly accurate portrayal of how our craft has been compromised by social media, critics and people just calling themselves foodies without actual knowledge of what we put into and sacrifice for our craft. This is by far the best movie I've seen this year. Perfect blend of comedy, thriller, dialogue and stellar acting. Really can't say enough. I'll leave it with the trailer doesn't do the movie justice, and you think you know what this movie will be until you don't." And I guess that sort of sums up as well what we said before, is that the trailer struggles because it can't really give away too much, otherwise it really would ruin the film for people.
Yeah, and I think, you know, for me, the story of the making of the film is almost just as fascinating. So I read, because I mean, we will focus just on the marketing effort of the producers themselves, but of course the media and the fans, and vloggers and bloggers have reviewed the film, and in fact sometimes fell into the trap of trying to see, for example, whether there's some messages and symbols in the different dishes. I said, no, you're falling for the trap of being pretentious about what the movie is trying to criticize. So wonderful. But one of the writers, Will Tracy, essentially shares that it was an experience when he was on his honeymoon in Norway, if memory serves, where he was taken on this bizarre kind of evening where they had to go on the boat on an island to a restaurant. So on, he was saying it was so unnerving to be taken to somewhere where you didn't have a lot of control, you know, and be served food and so on, that it was difficult to enjoy the food because the sense of what happens next, you know, and the film plays that sense of dread particularly well with the different people. So I think there's about 12 individuals invited representing different facets of the foodies. Can I just say, by the way, the moment I heard the term foodie, I just thought it was stupid and makes no sense. I mean, it's like where everybody eats food, you know, and to put a vowel Y at the end makes you a foodie. It's just bizarre. and of course you will understand that I come from a culture, France, where we enjoy food without much pretension, but they are pretentious chefs, of course, and dining kind of establishments. But in general, we enjoy the flavor and the company, as I know you do too. So for me, the idea being that, so he was born out of a real life experience. He wanted to then go further and explore further. But they went as far as talking to real chefs, you know, and in fact, it was a French chef that helped with the creation of the different dishes because, you know, back to the cinematography, it looks stunning when it's presented, even though I wouldn't want to be in that place whatsoever. And they even use, as a second unit director, someone that was already familiar with filming food documentary and going to the kitchens and so on, because on occasion it looks like some of the shows that you enjoy watching, that extreme close-up to what they're eating, the plates and so on, and it looks exquisite, but it's also pretentious. And listening as you go around the tables from the food critics who's trying to find the most bizarre adjective to label what they see, all the way to those rich people who basically couldn't care less and have an incredible sense of entitlement, where they go as far as lying about being someone's birthday to get a free cake out of the restaurant. You've got all the bad behavior that, you know, where you were at a moment ago, that chef is talking about being there. It's just really, really well thought out and well crafted.
Yeah, so the marketing, Pascal, Probably not the best marketing campaign, and I do think they've missed a few tricks here, and I'll come back
Sure.
to that as to what they may have done. But I do like the posters for the film, so we'll start with those. The posters, I guess, as you said, there was 12 different characters of people at this restaurant, so it probably would have lent itself to a series of character-driven posters that we've seen from films before, like Death on the Nile, etc., and Lord of the Rings. What they've done here is they've mainly focused on Anya Taylor-Joy's character and Ray Fiennes' character, so they each get their own individual character poster. The menu, that's the name of the film, obviously. The quite nice and simple strapline is painstakingly prepared, brilliant execution. There's quite a lot of subtext in that little strapline there. I do like that. Then there's the poster which focuses on Ray Fiennes, and of course he's resplendent in his chef whites. I was getting real Ernst Stavro Blofeld vibes from this
Yes.
this particular poster, which is quite interesting given that Ray Fiennes also plays M in the James Bond films. And then the third poster is more of an ensemble where it actually has Anya Taylor-Joy, Nicholas Hoult, and Ray Fiennes in the foreground, but the other 12 dinner guests, I guess, in the background. So interesting and very simple posters, but very colourful and very striking. I
think the
really
sharpness,
good.
the photography is what jumped at me. And it seems to be something we've seen more and more now. Potentially that could be the calling card for Searchlight Pictures, sorry. Like you, I was thinking, we're going to have the character posters of all the different guests, and we don't get it. And at first you could be forgiven to think it was a miss from the marketing team, or it was a bit lazy. But actually, once you watch the film, you get it. And I like this complicity with the audience where, ultimately only the character of Margot and the chef break the fourth wall and look into the lens. If you look at the ensemble poster, all the others are too busy either being pretentious about the food, or if you look very, very closely, they're very, very back, you see, I think, who would be the first victim. So what I like about the marketing is that they are giving, from the teaser trailer and so on, they are giving a lot away, but it can be missed. It's a blink of an eye.
That's right. So we've talked about the trailers themselves and how the teaser and the main trailer are actually more or less the same, and the main trailer is only slightly longer. Obviously, as you would expect, there was a website. They've got an Instagram, they've got Facebook, they've got Twitter. Quite a lot of good stuff on Twitter, actually. If you look through it, there's quite a lot of short clips which are still on Twitter. What I did find about this, Pascal, and bear in mind this film was only released towards the back end of 2022, is that a lot of these links are broken. And these websites don't exist anymore. And that's literally, I mean, we've had a bit of a moan about some companies that take down websites for films that are 10, 15, 20 years old. But you seriously don't expect a website to be starting to fall apart literally months later. I mean, we're only 3 or 4 months away from the launch of this, and already their social media links are broken. So that's not a very good show, I don't think. And they should probably go and fix that.
I would say it before, give us the job, people.
Yeah.
Roger and I will look after your website happily, but I think you're right. It's awfully brief. And I will say as well, and listen, we're not part of the meeting. We're not at the strategy. We didn't look at the data, from the audience profiling. But what I find as well is you've got the campaign leading up to the theatre release. Then there's a moment of silence, and then it comes back for the DVD and so on. And I think, in this day and age, with everything that you and I have discussed, for example, and looked at, there's a lot you can do in between those big milestones of theatre release and DVD, Blu-ray release to engage the audience. And again, between those who've seen it and that can kind of be complicit in creating maybe some memes and which people have done of their own back, all the way to the audience who perhaps didn't get a chance to go to the theatre. I regret. I think this is a movie to be seen on the big screen personally, but there we are. I think there's so much you could do. You're absolutely right.
So the actual launch coincided with the autumn series of festivals throughout the world. quite a few interesting things that happened at the Toronto premiere. They had a load of cheeseburger trucks to tie in with that scene in the film, which we probably can't talk about without ruining it for people who haven't seen it. And the renowned chef Dominic Crenn, the owner of 3 Michelin star restaurant Atelier Crenn in San Francisco, he was the food advisor on the production, as you said, and he did publicity to support the film. And in the UK, they teamed up with Waitrose and ran promotions in the Waitrose magazine. Now, I'm surprised, actually, that they didn't do more tie-ins with other food brands, or other food brands didn't want to do tie-ins with this, or maybe they didn't want to because of the subject matter of the film. But it just seemed to me that not only Waitrose, but other food brands could have got in on the act here and promoted themselves and the film at the same time.
It's fascinating because, I mean, on one hand, this is a movie that is an attack on how silly everything has become. I mean, it's on the behavior of the guests. You laugh out loud. And then you also have the behavior of the chefs and the sous chefs, which is just as ludicrous. So I think there's almost a symbiotic relationship where it's all BS all the way, and people are just feeding off on each other.
Yeah.
But within that, they didn't shortchange the audience. So they use, the French chef, Dominique, and she's been able to bring on the experience, but create essentially works of art. But within that, you've got a character of Margot, who is essentially the one that should not be there. The uninvited is almost like the bit of grit in the oyster, who basically speaks on behalf of us, the audience, saying, I'm still hungry. This is just nonsense. And, the breadless plate and that kind of things. And what's what I love about it is that it's a movie that really brings the audience in. It doesn't create a wall. And Margot is our messenger. She's a spokesperson, which I think plays to strong female character, which I always kind of love. But also this idea of ultimately these are dishes prepared by a woman in a male-dominated world. So there's a lot going on in a movie, which is why I've read people have seen it 3-4 times, and they get a lot out of watching it, and not just the once.
And one of the interesting tie-ins that I found when I was looking at this is something that happened in the Time Out magazine, Pascal. They actually created a spoof campaign.
Did they?
Yeah, so basically what they did is they ran an article in Time Out effectively reviewing this Hawthorne restaurant, but they reviewed it as if it was a real restaurant. So they included photos from the film of the dishes and effectively wrote that article as if it was, written by Jay Rayner or one of those celebrity critics that they have on MasterChef. They actually wrote it as if it was one of those. And then they said, if you want to book a table at the restaurant, click this link. And of course, if you click the link in the article, you don't go to a restaurant. You actually go to the web page for the actual restaurant itself. Nice. And then, of course, in the next edition, they actually had to admit that this was a spoof, and sorry if you fell for it, etc., etc. I think if you did read all the way down, it did say that it was a spoof at the end, but I'm sure some people were taken in. There was also Time Out extended on that and created the same sort of spoof on their Instagram feed as well. So 5 reasons we're dying to try out London's bougiest restaurant. So again, they're using the language from the film, the imagery, and effectively, again, taking a little bit of the rip out of the restaurant industry. You cannot eat, you can only taste. The restaurant that never reveals its recipes, the restaurant that doesn't allow you to leave your seat. All of that was included within this spoof campaign. So that was quite interesting. But overall, there was a mini campaign on in Instagram as well, using some shorter clips from the film. But overall, yes, I like the posters. Very visual, as you've said, striking photography. Teaser trailer and main trailer, as we've said, probably couldn't give much away. But apart from that, I do think they missed a trick here, because there could have been so much more, certainly on social media, I think, and much more tie-in with other food brands. So maybe they just decided they didn't want to do that, or they didn't have the budget. But I do think they've missed a trick with this.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's true that the word of mouth marketing has been quite something. I mean, if you look at the reviews and the comments, and like I say, people trying to decipher messages that were not there, and as if falling into the trap of becoming as pretentious as the guest or the group or the cooks and so on. So it was very tight. It was very finite in terms of time as well. I mean, the one that I did like, but again, it was just like a handful of those on Instagram. You know, they would have a sentence like, a fine place to dine, but the end would be struck off in red, so you end up with a fine place to die. So you had, excuse me, all this going on, but there's only 3 or 4 of those. There's no like a mini campaign. So, and then they jumped to something else and so on. So there was definitely a campaign around it, but I wonder whether the steer was around, which is how we began this recording today, a physical venues. So you talk about the festivals, creating, kind of marquees and booth, and having kind of foodie vans and that kind of things. So I wonder if that's where they've gone for. And social media has been there for that, to support those activities. It'd just be fascinating to talk to them.
Yeah, it would. It would.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for choosing the menu. I won't thank you for spoiling my night's sleep, though, because I kept either thinking about it or this feeling of unease, thinking, what have I just seen? Because it reminded me a bit, it reminded me a bit of a very old French movie called La Grande Bouffe, where very rich people eat themselves to death, which I think was then mocked by Monty Python in... was it? Which one was it?
Although it was the meaning of life, wasn't it? Mr.
Right.
Creosote.
Yeah. So you had that.
Wafer thin mint.
You also had. It felt as though one of the first Agatha Christie book I read, where people go on an island. I think it's called nowadays. It's called "And there were only one." So one by one people die, and we don't know who it is. There was all that going on. So I thoroughly enjoyed the film. Thank you very much for bringing it to my attention again, because I'd forgotten about it. And yeah, it was a pleasure to look at the marketing, and lot of good ideas, but a lot of if onlys.
Definitely.
Everyone, this was episode 96. Thank you so much, Roger, for being such an amazing co-host. For you, please leave comments, messages, and suggestions about which film we should review next time in the usual places. Until the next one, go out there and make sure your marketing's done right. I was Pascal Fintoni, and he was Roger Edwards.